it's the same thing about having a backup. I don't really believe in a plan B or backup plans because it's like preparing to fail. Like you just can't. Like a team doesn't roll out the stadium and go to play a game thinking, well, if we lose, it'll be okay. No, then you're going to lose. You've defeated yourself in your brain. So you handle the failure if you get there, but you're going to execute the plan and you have to go all in. The back door can't be open. Like, well, I can just fall back on this. Like, no, it just doesn't work that way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the FIO podcast. I am your host, Maddy Mad Dog Forberg. This is the podcast where we break down the stigma that everyone has it figured out but you. So let's figure it out together. Today we have a wonderful guest, Zack Bartell. Oh, that's the spooky one.
Wait, we can't hear.
Bruh.
As you can tell, we've got a different soundboard today, which is very exciting because I'm a child and there's some really cool things on here. But anyway, more importantly, Zack, thanks for joining us.
Maddy, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Ooh, yeah. Okay. So, Zack Bartell, I own a powerlifting gym in Irvine, California called SoCal Powerlifting. Been doing that for about 5 years now. And then I also do a lot of business coaching and mentorship, which is kind of how, we sort of really have connected more deeply in the last year and a half and as well. And so, yeah, I predominantly do that and came to Houston to compete in jiu-jitsu, which is another little hobby of mine. And yeah, I pretty much that sums it up, but definitely we can get into some more things as we go along.
We'll peel the onion for sure. Zack is a really good friend of mine. We met right after nationals. I competed at nationals. Yeah. I think that's the
2000 Spokane.
Spokane.
I always mess it up.
I don't know. Washington. 2018. I was the champ. Was I?
I think you were.
Yeah, I did. I did win. And I met you, and you had such a good sense of humor. And it was like you meet somebody and you feel like you're friends for a long time. It was that kind of thing. And then we've kind of stayed friends just through the circle. When I would come to do stuff with Juggernaut, you'd be around and we'd use your gyms. But I was always really inspired by you because I thought you were so much older, not because of how you looked, but the way you carried yourself and how much you've accomplished. I think what you have done is so impressive. And of course, we'll talk more about who you are as a person. But when did you kind of start this entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I started the gym venture in 2017, but it definitely was like, if you've, listened to any sort of entrepreneurial podcast, they talk about like the born entrepreneur, the guy, kid doing lemonade stands and things like that. That was me. So I was always doing lemonade stands. I used to actually make duct tape wallets for my friends and sell them for $5. And I got in trouble for that. Yeah. And I don't know, it wasn't about like making money. I just thought it was cool, I guess. And so I was always into like a little hustle here and there and doing things like that. Almost like Gary Vee style, I guess. And so really with the gym, Juggernaut. So I was working at Juggernaut at the time from 2016 to 2017. And Chad wanted to, close the gym, take the business online, which he's done so well, right? And I wasn't there yet in terms of like knowing what to do with online coaching or anything like that. So I was coaching powerlifting at the gym, and I saw this opportunity of like I could probably buy his stuff. I found a space that was nearby, and he gave me a very generous payment plan. I bought his stuff, took some clients I had them pay a few months membership dues up front, and opened what we know now today as SoCal Powerlifting. And that was 5 years ago now. Since then, we're at 444 clients. We've got like a team of 10. And it's, I live, I guess, the dream of that kid that loves the weight room, when he's in high school and wants to open the gym. Yeah.
To take it back a second, what even got you into the gym? Because when I first started following you, I remember you posting some throwbacks of stuff you would do on YouTube and like your motivational speeches, which maybe is cringy to you now, but looking back on that, it's like, this is just always who you are, that's been ingrained in you. And that's not the truth for a lot of people out there. So, which kind of came first, that personality trait or fitness, or did they just kind of go hand in hand to make that for you?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. It makes me smile because it's cool that you've seen that stuff. I've always been extremely extroverted. I've always been the class clown, lighting up the room, wanting to make people laugh, smile, bring good energy. And like my stepdad always told me I had the it factor, and I didn't know what that meant and whatever. But um, I was heavy as a kid. I was overweight my whole life. I was obese and made fun of and bullied and all that fun stuff. And a lot of I think big kids and big people you can probably relate if you grew up big. You sort of mask that with like almost making fun of yourself and being the funny guy. Like honestly, a lot of the funny guy in the group's usually the big one if you notice. And so I just that was my, if I couldn't be the athlete, I was the funny one at least, and hopefully my friends would want me around because of that. And I got into fitness when I was like 15 because I realized like shoot, like eventually I want girls to like me and that all that stuff. And I wanted to get better at football. I was playing football at the time, and I was like, well, okay, I may not grow like bigger or taller, but I can get wider. I can get in the
Yeah.
gym and get jacked and be more athletic. And so I saw it as sort of this vehicle for progression forward in life, I guess at the time. And I ended up losing 60 pounds from 16 years old to 17 years old.
Wow.
And that was huge. It was like from 245, and I'm not a super tall guy, so 245 to 180. Um, and that it totally changed the trajectory of my life.
And when you were doing that training, was it powerlifting, or did you start in general fitness and football training and that, you took a step to powerlifting?
So at the time, it was more general, but I was already like, I forget how Juggernaut came on my radar. I think that Chad was doing a lot of camps with athletes. So you know, so some of the athletes that were really good in my town were already training at Juggernaut, and so I was consuming a lot of like Juggernaut's content online. And then I sort of started following some of the powerlifting content, and then I was the idea, when you're a kid, you just think stronger is better. So you
Hmm.
don't think about sports forms. We're talking about this today with you and
Yeah.
Luke. It's like you just, oh, I might as well get stronger. That probably will help me like push guys off the line better, and I'll be faster, maybe more explosive. So I was training predominantly powerlifting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also, once I started like seeing we as humans, I think we gravitate towards things we're good at.
Hmm.
And I think that strength was the first thing that I found that I actually felt like I was better at than most, like genetically almost. Like I was sort of drawn to it because I was like ahead and I was seeing the rewards. Like when I was 15, even before I lost weight, I benched 300 pounds.
Wow.
And when I was in middle school, and some of my friends were a little bit older, we went in someone's garage and we were benching, and I benched more than all of them. I don't remember what the number was. Maybe it was like 185 or 200, and they were freshmen benching like, 115, 135. And so this was like the first time in my life where there was some sort of athletic endeavor where I was like rewarded. I was like, "Oh, I'm good.
Mhm.
I'm good at this." And so I was training kind of like started training more for strength with powerlifting, not to any good standard. My squats were super high. The benches were all bounced with my butt coming off the bench. But really what happened there is there was a coach that was training someone in my high school weight room who had some powerlifting experience, and he sort of took me under his wing. And then I realized too that I'm not going to play college football. I'm not big enough. Powerlifting might be an athletic endeavor that I could pursue past high school, because I knew that I had the brain of like, I need to be like, there needs to be a goal. Like I can't just do it to do it. Like I have to have a goal. And powerlifting for me became the athletic endeavor. I actually did my first meet in high school at 17.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're talking about fitness and being an extrovert, and we had mentioned that you had done these kind of motivational speeches,
Yeah.
being an extrovert, were you confident, or was that something that came along as you grew up, or was that really prompted by fitness?
So yeah, with the motivational speeches, which you guys can capture on Bartell Barbell YouTube. I think it's still
Yes.
up there. If you look
I'll
up
put
Zack
the link.
Bartell, yeah, they're up there. And I show my friends, and I laugh because it was authentic. I've
Mhm.
stayed on brand. I don't feel,
Yeah.
yeah, like I look back and yeah, it was cringe, but I wish I could go back and tell 17-year-old Zach, like, dude, like the fact that you had the confidence to just
Mhm.
put yourself out there. And I remember even making those. It was literally just me listening to like some sort of like 300 violin orchestra was like one of my favorites. Like, yeah, it's just big
The build
orchestra
up.
music. Yeah. And just speaking into a phone, no script, just like letting it all out there. And like, when I listen back to those, it sometimes like makes me a little emotional because I'm like, man, the things that kid was like going through in his head, like being made fun of and bullied and overcoming these things. And now being sort of this more of an athlete and respected as a leader and stuff. And in my crew at the time, Um, it's so cool. And so I guess like I've always had that contagious energy. And then with the YouTube stuff, I really at the time I saw other fitness YouTubers like Candido and stuff like that. And I
Mm.
was, oh, like this could be the move. Like maybe this is how I get into fitness and make it my passionate for a living. And so that was the first kind of step towards what I thought was gonna be my life.
Who would you look at for motivational content like that? Because obviously what you were doing is a bit different than, what Candido was doing, just talking about
Yeah.
specifics on powerlifting. Were you just trying to create your own element of that, or were you inspired by somebody else?
Yeah, so I think I saw a lot of like fitness bloggers or vloggers rather, and so I thought that I don't know who in particular, but I thought like the vlogging thing was getting really big. So if you do look at like the non-motivational videos, like there was a couple where I break down top supplements for people. I was working in a nutrition store at the time. There's another one where I talk about like my performance at a nationals meet or something like that. So I was trying to sort of, the day in the life, like, hey, here's my experience, like this is what I'm going on, almost like I was this YouTube star already.
Hmm.
Because it's one of those things, it's like, how do you build it? Do you just pretend like you're there and then create it?
Yeah.
Or do you sort of there wasn't, I guess, anyone in particular that I looked at. More so I was like the trend of where things were going at the time. I mean, this was even before. So this was 2013. I mean, I don't think Meg Squats was there yet. Like 'cause I started consuming some of her stuff.
Hmm.
Candido, I think, was USAPL, like big into it. Chad was even before he would do a ton of YouTube stuff, is more blogs. So it was early YouTube. I mean, but I didn't stick with it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so it never really became anything, I guess.
Well, it's not too late. Would you ever
It's
go back and do more stuff like that?
Yeah, but I'd want to invest in a team behind me to
Mm.
help me curate the content, in the sense of like I can speak and talk and build, but I'm not good with the details and the sound, the microphone, the editing. I sound bad, but like, I just don't feel like I have time for that right now.
Mm.
And so I eventually I do want to build the personal brand and do more to help others that way.
I think that you are such a good speaker, and what you have to say is very substantial, that you should be somebody speaking to students or colleges. Is that ever something that you've kind of wanted for yourself?
I love speaking. It's always come naturally. I've always been the emotional leader. I've always been able to speak in the room, every funeral, every wedding, every any event like that. Absolutely. I would love the opportunity to speak to a group of people. I did a speech, well, it wasn't really a speech, but just like a story, I guess, like Zoom call for a college class maybe a couple months ago, and it was like a interior design course
Mm.
at a junior college. My mom knew one of the professors because they're friends, and it became like sort of a motivational talk out of
Mm.
nowhere because I think that's just who I am.
Yeah.
But I live by those rules, and so yeah, if I could do more stuff like that, and just it all comes down to sometimes people need the extra push, the extra spark to ignite the flame to push them to where they want to go, and sometimes it's just showing them that they can believe in themselves by telling them a story of someone that really wasn't gifted in many ways and still was able to create the world they wanted to live in.
I think that's really interesting. Where do you think that kind of need came from? Do you feel like you're speaking kind of even to yourself maybe back then, and that's where you've drawn that inspiration from?
Well, I've always been really communicative and yeah, I have no problem being open to. We've talked about this. Like, my parents split up when I was pretty young and I was a pretty rambunctious child. And so I was thrown in therapy really, really early on. I'm super grateful that my parents had the resources to do that. And I think it forced me to sort of attack the problems head on and communicate with an adult when I'm a child, like
Mm.
I was 10, right? And so I think that's part of it. I've always been able to communicate with my parents. I knew how to navigate relationships really well. Um, I do think there's some nature there. Like I was sort of born with it. But I do think it's sort of developing over time and just realizing like everyone has different gifts. Like at the end of the day, like no matter how you feel, there is something that makes you special. Like again, that's not me, bullshitting it. I do believe that everyone is special in their own way. Like they have a gift, and for me, it's always really had been the communication factor. I feel like I can be empathetic. I can understand. And I think a lot of that does come with hardship and going through things and having to grow up when you're younger with some hardship. And I think that's a huge factor.
Definitely. And I think what you're saying too about going into therapy so young in the way that you were able to speak to your parents, you learn how to speak to adults. Like
Yeah.
your communication style becomes very mature, which is not something that most kids your age around that time
Yeah.
can have. Um, but I think, like you said, that is a very big strength that you've been able to carry into even your business life because you're 26 or 25?
26. Just turned
26.
26 a couple months ago. So yeah, we're about the same age.
Yeah.
25, yeah.
Zach and I are almost the same age, and that's what I've been saying is I've been so inspired by Zach because you've accomplished so much. And I think that your ability to speak to people is a really big factor in that. Because when you started the gym,
Yeah.
it was kind of just you, and now you've built it into this team of people that,
Yeah.
you know, we all say that our businesses are like family, but you've curated
It
a team
is.
of people that you really trust, and you're a leader. When did you start kind of opening the gym? Like, when did you feel like you had the confidence and the means to do so?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Well, like logistically, 2017 August when Chad was closing the gym, but really it was sort of at that time I was out of what I felt like was necessity. I looked at my situation. So at the time I was a student. I was going to Cal State Fullerton studying kinesiology. I was, I think, going into my junior year of college. I was working for Juggernaut front desk at the gym. I was coaching a few lifters in the gym. I think I had a roster of like 14 people I was working with, and we would just do like kind of almost group training. Everyone had their program. I'd walk around and coach. I did some work for Iron Rebel at the time in their warehouse shipping, which I sucked at, by the way. Sorry, Iron Rebel. And then I was working weekends sometimes at NutriShop. So I had like a bunch of different jobs at the time. And so I was really scared because the one job I was really passionate about was coaching these clients. And with the gym closing, it was like, I guess most people would see that and be like, oh, I guess that chapter's
That's
closed.
done.
Yeah.
This is before like remote training, really.
Yeah, this is early, yeah. And also I feel like one of the reasons they worked with me, a child at the time, I was like, 19, 20, was because I was in person. So I thought that was the value. And so I was just like, well, I can ask for some money from them up front as a membership, and I've got some money saved up, and and Chad was very gracious and gave me a payment plan, and I was like, cool. Like I literally was like, worst case scenario, I just have some equipment, I'll put it in a storage unit and like have a little myself, like a gym to myself,
Did you buy the equipment off of Chad?
Majority of my original stuff was Chad stuff, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was like $5,000 worth, and yeah, again, super gracious because it was like no interest. Yeah, very, very kind thing. And maybe that was like what started for me, like this whole pay it forward concept, this whole karma economy of like, okay, like if someone along the way can help me like that, like I hope that I can help people like that too one day.
When you decided to take it on your own, did you know a lot about business to get started?
Zero. It was all passion, totally all passion, all about value. It was just, I loved coaching. I loved that I loved what I did. And I loved helping people, and I loved powerlifting. At that time, I loved powerlifting because I was into it. So I was competing, year round and decently high level, like competing at nationals, stuff like that. And so I saw it as sort of this outlet that I really enjoy because, well, my whole life you're taught, go to school, get a job. Like I never wanted to work in a box. And so this was I saw this as my out of like, no way. Like, I think I can like do what I love for the rest of my life. And I wrote goals. Like when I opened the gym, like I think my mom's found them over the years and stuff, but like I had goals written down of like, okay, by 2018, I want like 30 clients, and I want a gym that's 2,000 square feet. And I want to have a program that I sell, like just kind of like little checkpoints. I never dreamed that it would grow to the size it grew, but I say that I think I started the gym purely and grew it off of charisma in the beginning. It was all just, okay, like be the best coach I can be the best lifter I can be the best friend to these people. And hopefully things will work out. But when you're young, you're naive, you have nothing to lose. And I say this a lot, the more you have, the more you have to lose. I had nothing. I was in school. I was a student. So it's so easy. Well, no matter what, if I fail, like, okay, define what failure is. And for me, failure was my own gym in a little box in a storage unit. So that's not that bad. So if I could handle that, like, no worries. Like this ain't no thing.
Without having the, business insight or, logistics, something that I talk a lot about now that I've realized, especially even working with you, is that nothing is magic. There's nothing that somebody that you look up to has accomplished that you can't also do, because it's just steps to get there. And you're saying that goal setting was a really big thing for you. Do you feel like that was one of the reasons you were most successful when you started off that way, because you were able to create those kind of checkpoints?
I think even looking at the checkpoints, I honestly modeled it off of like what I saw from like Chad's success and stuff. I think we model our own success off of other people we look up to, because we don't know what our own story could look like. And at the end of the day, you create your own story.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I don't think it was really the goals per se, but it was the belief that it's possible. Sounds cliche, but again, it really all comes down to do you believe this can work? Because at the end of the day, if you don't, who else is going to believe it? If you don't believe in what you're selling and your product and what you're offering, your potential clients aren't going to believe in you. Like, my parents didn't believe in me. And my mom's probably going to listen to this and she'll laugh because, she grew up with a father that had a lot of failed businesses who had filed bankruptcy multiple times. Entrepreneurship was not a thing in my family, really, except for him, and it didn't work out for the best. And so I believed in me and I believed what I was doing. But again, I also believe that if it didn't work out, that's okay too. I'm going to be okay.
Did you ever feel spiteful with the lack of support or belief?
Yes, because to me it seemed like there was no other way. Of course I'm putting my mind to this. We talked about the ADHD thing. Of course I'm going to complete it. If you push off a project to do it 2 hours before, you're going to do it, but other people just don't understand. So I had so much belief in myself that I knew it was going to work out. But when you're a parent, and this is why looking back, hindsight 2020 with more perspective as I've gotten a little older, it's your parents just want you to be safe and make the right plays. Your parents just want you to live a happy life, a low risk life. And I would probably want my kids to probably do something similar because I want them to just be safe and okay. And entrepreneurship on paper, if you look at it as a mathematical equation, is not a safe bet.
No.
It's not. It's rolling the dice, and it's betting on yourself, which again, for me, that's a sure bet. 100% I'm going to win if it's on me, if it's up to me. But I think from a parent's perspective, it's not. So yeah, I was salty. It hurt because I would share my wins with my mom. And she, I'd share revenue wins and how it's growing. And her first question would be well, what are your costs? And kind of dig into well, how much are you, paying and risking, and how much are you saving? It was never about, oh, that's great. Keep it going,
Reward first and then question.
Yeah. Which positive reinforcement would have been cool. But now, sorry, Mom, when you listen to this, but now, there's tons of support. And but that was hard. It was hard.
Yeah, I bet. At what point then, when you first started, did you feel like you were doing a good job? Because we talked earlier about how it is so valuable to have somebody pat you on the back and tell you that you're doing a good job. So have you had, if any, what points were you I'm actually doing this? This is actually going well.
Yeah. Something I don't do enough is reflect.
I
definitely don't reflect on, I'm sure you're the same. It's I just don't reflect enough on look how far I've come, And so looking back, I guess, one of the biggest things I did was hire a business coach a little over a year in. I had a few subsequent months where I just was hitting the same numbers, and I got connected with this company and ended up with this business coach. Her name was Katrina at the time. And, she was the first person that I was paying her, right? So of course she's going to pat me on the back and stuff, but really was the first person to be got it. You've got this figured out. You've got it going on. And as I was growing then from 10K to 20 to 30K to 40K a month, I could see it. I would ask dead on, do you have any other clients growing like this? And she's like, no, not I'm the anomaly, but this model, what I'm doing, it's an anomaly. This is special. This is special. And so I sort of realized, okay, this is special because money is a taboo topic, business. I'm not going to just go up to you and be like, hey, Maddy, what'd you bring in this month? We were taught when we grew up, we don't
You will ask me that.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We were taught not to ask people how much money they make. We just don't ask. Our parents,
don't talk about it.
Exactly. And so, and my parents aren't going to understand, again, same thing, because it's they've always made W-2 wages all their lives. They don't have businesses. So how do you know what's good and what's bad? How do you measure up? Just don't, unless you hire someone or talk with someone who does know what's going on, to sort of be this is great. That's awesome. That's why the business coaching works so well is because, again, it's this weird like business therapy thing where it's like you can talk about things like money and revenue. It's not taboo. It's not scary. We peel back the onion. And so it was definitely like my first business coaching experience that I realized, okay, like I think I know what I'm doing. I think,
Yeah.
and we're just gonna keep doing what we're doing. That's all.
I remember, it's funny you say that because I remember the first time that we ran metrics,
Mm.
and at the end we were just like punching numbers. At the end, you're like, "Congrats, you have a successful business."
Yeah.
And it's like you're not in the red.
Yeah.
Like you're doing good.
Beat the odds.
And I like remember that when I'm struggling with business or feel like I'm not doing well because, as an entrepreneur, it gets really easy to use that emotion of not feeling well instead of looking at the numbers. And so I think back to that moment when you said that to me, because that was really reassuring. So you had that with your business coach. Did you have that with, friends or family where you were like, you brought to them like, I'm actually doing this. It's actually going well.
Yeah, but I think if you ask anyone, hey, like that owns a business, hey, how's your business doing? Like most times people, it's great. Like because they either don't know or they just don't, it's not worth kind of getting into because they don't want to talk about it. And one of the things you hit there is talking about numbers versus feelings and how we're doing versus looking at the objective points. And that's really important because I feel, especially in fitness, you get more emotional type of people. We're not analytical. We probably found this because we like to use our hands and move and work hard, things like that. We don't crunch numbers. And so it is important to take the emotion out. And with my business coach and with you, we've learned to make decisions based on the objective markers and not based on how we feel like something's doing or going and stuff like that. So yeah, with my parents, like with my friends, for like that one's tough because none of my friends own businesses. They're all W-2. And at that time too, a lot of them were still in school. And so while they were off, like having a lot of fun, going to frat parties and stuff, I was working a bunch of jobs and running this facility. And sometimes I'd get sad about it because I'd see their Instagram stories, their Snapchats, and like, wow, that looks like a blast. But then I would remind myself, like, I'm onto something. And then same thing with the parents. It's like, at what point, to their defense, how do they know it's good? If I make $10,000 in a month with my gym, does that mean good? We don't know. They don't know. They've never run a gym or a business. And so I would definitely be proud of it because when you're 20 years old and if you pull in $10,000 of revenue, you're going to be stoked.
Yeah, of course.
But looking back, again, I had no marker of that's good other than, bank account went up.
Nice.
Yay.
We like that. And I definitely want to come back to what you were saying about, kind of that feeling of isolation that you were doing this thing and your friends are doing something else. But before we get to that, your first gym, you outgrew. So at what point did you decide to make the leap to a bigger space?
Oh, it wasn't a decision. So my first gym I was subleasing a space from another gym. So the gym we were subleasing from had two warehouses, one in the front, one in the back. The front one was 1,800 square feet and the back one was about 5,000. So we rented the front one from them. And what was happening is it was growing really fast to the point where the landlord from the front area was upset about our parking, about our noise, and threatened to evict the people I was subleasing from. And so the people I was subleasing from said, you got to go, which was really hard. So I go from this bootstrap sort of sublease setup to shoot. Now I have to put my big boy pants on and like talk with like landlords and agents and things like that and find a space. And I found this amazing space that was super close by. Because I think my biggest fear at the time was losing clients based on where I was going to move. People want everything that, that's convenient to them.
Yeah.
So we lost one when I eventually moved, by the way. I know his name. But either way.
We know.
I remember these things. And this is 2019. A week before we're set to move, the deal falls through. And so that was amazing. The fact that you remember that it's that button and like
it says womp.
Okay. Still, that was great.
Thanks.
I I thought I thought I was done. Like, I
Mm.
no, I honestly, because space, so we're in Southern California. So if you're living, if you're in Texas or if you're in other, areas that with there's just more space, we don't have a lot of space in Southern California. We're not building new buildings. So it's
No, it's
all packed, it's
packed.
built, it's expensive. And so we have gyms are very hard to open in California because a lot of landlords don't want them. We're in an industrial space, so it's a space that's not meant for, it's not retail, right? Well, they don't want gyms because there's more people in them, we're noisy, whatever, and they maybe have some bad blood there thinking that we're not going to pay our rents because we're just a bunch of meatheads. It's not true. Um, and so I had found this space that was going to allow a gym. Deal falls through. They found someone else that's going to come in, pay more money, take over more spaces, whatever. It's a business decision. And so I remember literally being on my laptop in between sets while I was training, like looking at spaces. And I stumbled like 4 days before we were set to be kicked out. Like I found one,
Wow.
and like did everything I could to push the deal through, signed, got it done. And then, 4 days later we started the move. But that was the first, I think, real major hiccup in the whole process and realizing how fragile this was, how fragile business is, and how
Mhm.
it is very easy to fail. And that was going to be failure, not because I wasn't good enough, but because I was too good, because it was growing too fast, right? Which would have been even worse of a feeling. So that was very hard.
When you were going through that, obviously, it sounds like it was something that was very necessary to go through. It sounds like there are so many things in business or in anything that we're doing that, it's kind of like a false door. Like it's really not the one that we're supposed to go into, but we kind of had a glimpse of what was there. Um, did it feel like the space that you eventually got, was that the best thing that could have happened? Did it not feel that way?
It was the best thing that could. I mean, Steve Jobs has a quote from his Stanford commencement address, which I just sent the link to Luke before this. You can only connect the dots looking back, not to connect the dots looking forwards. And the space that we would have had, we would have outgrown way too fast, and there probably would have been less flexibility on like being able to move around. The space we ended up moving into, we outgrew really quickly, and they were able to give us another unit that was nearby that was 3 times the size, and keep our lease in like the same terms and stuff. And because they're just glad to be filling a bigger building, we're going to be paying more, and they'll just fill someone else in our old spot. So looking back, it was the perfect situation. But of course, in that moment, you think the world's going to end. And there have been multiple moments, and this is the thing, guys, too. Like everyone who's listening, there's going to be moments in business or in life, like you feel like your world is crumbling.
Mhm.
Like you feel like the world is crumbling and everyone's out to get you, and that it's maybe it's not your fault, right? But I think looking 5 years from now, it's going to be a blip on your radar. In fact, I don't even think about that moment often where like that deal fell through and I thought my gym was going to close at all, because it just, unless I'm going to reflect, like it really just didn't. It's a blip now on the
Mm.
radar of the whole scheme of things. Same thing with like COVID and handling all that. You just execute. And so you just have to keep moving. I guess I could have like called it and been like, well, I guess that this is done.
Mhm.
But that wasn't, again, I believed in myself, and it wasn't an option.
It would have been a really easy perspective to have, to be like, guess it just wasn't for me. Tried it.
Yeah, and that's the whole 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door. I talked to my therapist about this before, even about like relationships and things like that. People who aren't willing to commit to relationships and stuff, and always, they just want to like date forever and not commit. It's the same concept. It's like, well, it's the same thing about having a backup. I don't really believe in a plan B or backup plans, because it's like preparing to fail. Like
Mhm.
you just can't. Like a team doesn't roll out the stadium and go to play a game thinking, well, if we lose, it'll be okay. No, then you're going to lose. You've defeated yourself in your brain. So you handle the failure if you get there, but you're going to execute the plan, and you have to go all in. The back door can't be open. Like, well, like I can just fall back on this. Like,
Mhm.
no, it just doesn't work that way.
Right. I think that's huge. Kind of to pivot a little bit. So you've kind of built everything on powerlifting, and you're not powerlifting anymore. You're doing
I'm
jujitsu. Like
washed.
you're
I'm
washed,
washed.
retired. You're doing jujitsu now. You smashed this competition, double gold. Luke and I were talking the other day about the kind of personalities that are drawn to jujitsu. Because I think that there's something to say about people who do this sport. It takes a long time. It
Yes.
takes a long time to do well. you're not getting like the ROI, like you're there for a long time. And Luke and I were kind of connecting some dots of like a lot of business people are drawn to this just because they know what it means to just do the work over a period of time.
Yeah, I think what you're hitting there is like in jiu-jitsu, there's not necessarily instant gratification.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just show up for a day and get your black belt. Like
Right.
it's in a good school, it'll take 10 years. Whether you're amazing at jiu-jitsu or you're bad, it's time.
Yeah.
It's just time. And I do find that like the guys I train with predominantly, I go to like our noon class at my gym and it's all like entrepreneur spirits. It's guys like, either on their lunch breaks or, between client calls, something like that. There are so many entrepreneurial people. And I think because people, I'm not the type of guy to relate every bit of life to jiu-jitsu. Like there's some jiu-jitsu philosophers like that. It's a sport, like it's super fun, right? But I do find that jiu-jitsu is a sport that is extremely technical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like you're solving a person puzzle.
Yes.
Okay, if he does this, I do that, I counter with this. It's body chess.
Mhm.
And I think that it takes a certain type of mind to be drawn towards that game. And I think that person who's drawn towards a game like that has a lot of intellect and probably is more likely to be successful. I think it's the same for why we see a lot of high level athletes go into business and have success, or special operations operatives like Jocko Willink or something like that, or Tim Kennedy
Yes.
go into business after special ops and have a ton of success. It's the same concept. It's this, you possess the principles of discipline. You're willing to show up on the bad days and keep going and keep building and keep learning, no matter if it's a good day or a bad day. And if you apply that to anything else, you're going to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been really interesting for me. And yeah, I stopped powerlifting predominantly because I had knee reconstructive surgery on my left knee. When I was playing sports growing up, I used to dislocate my kneecap, all that fun stuff. And so they pretty much had to redo the knee in 2018. I couldn't squat anymore. And so that was a whole like image change, and a whole thing in my business is like, we can talk about this at some point. It's like, when you don't do the thing that your business does anymore, like who are you? Who are you? You lose your entire image of yourself. Luckily for me, a year later, I found jiu-jitsu because in my mind, I knew that to be a sane person, I needed an outlet, and I found jiu-jitsu in 2019, and I never looked back. And at the time, it was going to be a hobby for me. And then of course, we talked about it earlier, like, I guess I train like a pro athlete now, where I train 8-9 sessions a week, and it's all I love and think about for the most part.
That's crazy. 8-9 sessions. I mean, it's paying off. Obviously, you're doing really well. What was it like to make that adjustment, to switch? Because that's something that you and I have talked about on our calls of like, if I'm competing in bodybuilding or powerlifting, or if I'm not doing either, who am I? What's my business doing? And while it sucks to say that my business does better in prep, it's also true.
Yeah.
It's also realistic. And I'm sure you've dealt with some element of that on your own too.
Yeah. So I think the first and foremost is you need to accept yourself as who you are. So whether you're an athlete, a business, but whatever it is, like you have to be okay with who you are, like as Maddy Forberg, first and foremost, as you know yourself, not as the image that you portray yourself as. Because we all have an image, we personify like to the public.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the same things to you as I would to say to everyone. Like we're going to have different types of conversations. So that was the biggest lesson I learned, is like, I wasn't Zack the powerlifter. There's more to me than sport. And this is, I think, what a lot of athletes go through once they retire. So I say retire like I was like super good. I was above average, but either way, right? It's taken away from you. It wasn't my choice to stop. I had to. So I think that's first and foremost. And then it's realizing, okay, well, shoot, then I can't attach myself to like anything else that's external. And I can't, like, my business, same thing with business. Like, I can't attach my personal value as who I am as a human being based on my business performance. Because if you do that, you're set up for a rocky road. Like, at some point, things are going to be hard. Like, it's just inevitable. So that in itself is just tough. And that's just going to take a lot of introspective work, and maybe working with a therapist or working, just, on yourself. But I think then on top of that, it's then understanding, okay, well, these things don't reflect who I am, but I love them and I'm passionate about them. So what I did personally, my story was, I went all in on my team. If I can't coach powerlifting, or sorry, at the time, actually, I went all in on my clients. If I can't lift myself anymore, I'm going to be the best goddamn coach there is. And I did everything in my power at the time to be that. And then sort of when the business got busy enough and stuff where I couldn't coach without shooting myself in the foot as far as being able to grow the thing, it was, I'm going to put everything I got in my team. I'm going to be the best damn leader there is. and just someone that they're going to want to rally for and get behind. And that's sort of, I've been on in that with that hat on since, and that's what I continue to do. But then it's expanded to that, okay, best, business mentor, the best friend, the best person, brother. So I guess I've posted a Venn diagram one time on my Instagram. It's like I see like 3 different circles in my life as it stands. It's like family, business, and it's sport. I think sport's always going to be there for me. Maybe there will be a day where I can't do jujitsu. I don't know if I'll ever burn out because I feel like jujitsu is a sport where you never know it all. Like my professor, Jiva Santana, he's been training, since he was 18. He's in his 50s now. And I mean, he still figures out moves and things and has like the light bulb go off. And if he can still there's still new stuff, new pieces to the puzzle at that point, I just know for me, there's always going to be something new and different and something I'm going to want to learn. But if I do burn out or something, I'm always going to want some sort of vehicle for sport performance or athleticism. I'm going to care about who I am as a family person, as a friend. And then business, I think for me is always going to be important. And even business in the sense of like how I'm making the world a better place. Because in today's day and age, especially like with capitalism, like I truly believe the point of business is you're solving a problem. So hopefully I'm solving a problem that's necessary and good and that helps make the world a better place is my thought process.
And absolutely, people that are drawn to powerlifting, I feel like, aren't just people that want to lift heavy. I think there is some kind of personality trait that drives people to just want to be capable. That's why I started. And every time that I tell people that, that's why I wanted to do it, to feel capable, to feel like I was doing something. I feel like a lot of people really resonate with that. So I think it's meaningful that you're creating an environment where people feel safe enough to do that, because not a lot of gyms do that for people.
Yeah. And I think like with you, especially, dealing with, some of the things that you dealt with, right? It's almost like proving it to yourself that it's possible that you are capable because you don't believe it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so almost with powerlifting, it's like hitting these objective numbers proves it. It's like, well, I'm obviously capable because this number, I just benched 400 pounds. Like people, that's not normal. Right. And so it's like this objective marker of progress. That's why I think bodybuilding can be hard sometimes because it's relatively subjective.
Yeah.
It's very hard to look in the mirror and be like, oh, I look perfect. Like how many times have you looked in the mirror and you're like, you notice no flaws? It's
no, never.
So whereas in powerlifting, it's like that lift was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it needs to be executed. And a lot of sports are like that, where like it's objective. You can really base your progress based on some sort of objective marker. And I think people are drawn to powerlifting, especially because with strength work, rather than just bodybuilding or lifting, or even just casually like lifting weights, it gives you objective markers of progress and growth. That's why I think my gym's done really well, like making powerlifting sort of a almost like a gen pop vehicle to fitness, just like a Soul Cycle would be to someone.
I think that itself is very interesting because powerlifting hasn't always been very popular, but there are a lot of different people that go to your gym. It feels like, there's all different age ranges and backgrounds. How do you feel like you've been able to curate or contribute to the community that you've created there?
Definitely. So first things first is like, you have to understand that when building any sort of sport-based fitness business, so jujitsu is one, or powerlifting. Like I was talking with my buddy, Professor Kyle at my gym, who, one day he wants to open his own academy, and we we're talking, and he already knew this, but I was talking, I was like, yeah, like jiu-jitsu business predominantly serving white belts. Like there just always will be more white belts than there are colored belts forever, because people try things and they stop. It's just what people do.
Right.
And so with powerlifting, for me, the focus was taking the sport from the sport of old, sweaty, hairy men in a box gym to normal people who work a desk job and work normal jobs all day, can do and get stronger and get in better shape, because, well, that's what it did for me. I went from being the fat kid to being this in shape person and feeling better and more confident in my own skin because I got into lifting weights. So then other people can do that. So for me, it's always been focusing on those folks that maybe wouldn't have found it on their own, or they would never have competed in powerlifting. One of the biggest things I'm proud of is we get a lot of our lifters to compete. When we host our own meets at our gym, like 40 or 50 of those are our own clients. And these aren't clients that are necessarily amazingly strong or anything like that. It's just normal general population folks, right? But it's people who almost the bug bit them. They see the progress, I'm going to do the damn thing, right? And and showing them that you don't need to be this star athlete to like go out there and do a comp. You can just go and you can just do it. Same thing with jiu-jitsu comps, just sign up. And so my focus has always been on like the general pop sort of normal people. And there will always be your 1%ers. You know, we've got some very strong people that train. We've got some people that were like more gen pop and they're just freaks and they blew up and they're getting really strong. But ultimately you do need to build to serve the majority, in my opinion. And so for us, it's always been about how do we make powerlifting a little bit more palatable so it's not, angry, sweaty men sniffing ammonia, yelling, bleeding with a bunch of drugs, stuff like that. It can be tasteful in a sense.
And really taking away from this idea that it's truly an individual sport to now you have a community, now that you have a team.
Yes, which I think powerlifting can be monotonous at times. And so what makes it, I think, more fun is, having people that you train sort of you're not training with per se, 'cause you're on different programs, but side by side, you show up, like our morning crew at the gym's the most lit. Like they all know each other, they're posting, they're going to each other's like baby showers and like wedding parties. And
Wow.
that's honestly the coolest thing for me. Like, I guess that's one of the things I'll reflect and be like, if I didn't make the gym, they would have never met.
Yes.
So like, I'm like, oh, that's cool, you know?
It's a powerful feeling.
Yeah. And so I think the community-based stuff's been amazing. And that's been a huge, huge growth factor for us, is just almost having like liaisons of the gym preaching, the gospel of what we do. And because it's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks to you, I was able to hire some coaches and we had our first team retreat. I remember our meeting before the retreat. You were like, I can't wait for our call next week because you're going to sit here and tell me how that was the best weekend of your life, which was absolutely true. And in a variety of different ways. But a big one was just like you had said, sitting back and just witnessing people connect with each other that would probably have never ever talked or befriended each other. Like our coaches are very different people. And even though we're in fitness, they're all pretty different personality types and they are kind of joking around like brothers. And it felt really heartwarming. And I'm sure for you on a larger scale, it just becomes kind of addictive in a really good way. Like you just want to keep connecting more people.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're wrong. You would have hired coaches without me. I think that business coaching, mentorship just cuts down lead time. So just the amount of time it might have taken or like how long it would have taken to get it to a place where you're stoked where things are at. I think that's all it is. Same thing with powerlifting coaching. Like someone can probably get strong enough, but they'll get strong faster. So, but I agree. It's almost like seeing it all in action, seeing it happen. Like there was a book I was reading, it's talking about connectors. And I think I'm a connector, like you're a connector, you connect people. And it's just like, oh, like you just bring people together in a collaborative workspace or environment. And all of a sudden like they're hitting it off. And that's a really freaking cool feeling. It's important.
Absolutely. And Zach and I have talked, I think it was maybe last week on our call about doing more podcast stuff together.
Yeah.
So although I would love to sit and talk about a billion different things because you're so interesting and so insightful, we don't have enough time, but hopefully we'll be back and doing more things like this together. But before we kind of finish things off, what are some kind of resources, because you're the king of resources, for people that want to get entrepreneur lifestyle, like books, podcasts? What kind of things would you recommend?
Yeah. That one's tough. So I'm big into like the mindset books. So like I really like Simon Sinek's an author I've recommended to you. So I'm a big fan of like Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. Big fan of Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership. A little bit rah motivational, but also like you can see how like operations, like it needs to be tactical. And you need to be analytical and make decisions based on fact and not feelings. I think then also top 10 distinctions between millionaires and the middle class. I think Keith Cameron Smith writes that one. It's very, very easy to read. Might take you an hour and a half to listen to on Audible, but some really, really good pointers there as well. Just understanding how the wealthy use their money, especially if you didn't come from a family that had money, because that's one of the biggest things is like if we don't learn we learn about money from our parents. And if your parents weren't good with money, you learned how to be bad with money, probably. Like that's just the gist. Or your parents just didn't talk about it because it was taboo. We don't talk about it, right? And so you have to find the good resources to talk about money. And I think we're changing it like that as a society. Like we are talking about these things a little bit more. But that's super important. So I would probably start there. And then from there, I would just think of it this way. If you do want to get into business, like at the end of the day, it's a simple equation. You're solving a problem. So if you have a solution to a problem that people have, even if someone else also has the same solution to the problem, it's how do you make your solution better than the other guy? For me, in the beginning, that was like the attentiveness to my clients and the empathy and just giving a shit. Like I knew Zach with, no followers on Instagram, but with his clients, like I would give a shit more than the guy with a bunch of followers that has a bunch of clients. So
Right.
that was how I started. And then it's understanding like value and things like that. And how can I give more value and stuff? So it's just solving a problem and solving it better than everyone else.
And kind of just elevating your strong suits, like you
Play your
alluded
strengths.
to.
People are always talking about, oh, like understand your weaknesses, like make your weaknesses your strengths. Like I'm a big believer in you play your strengths. You just dive into your strengths, and eventually you get to the point where you can hire someone to help with the weaknesses, or you have a partner that can help with the weaknesses and things like that. And so you should just own it. Just go. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you can always hire Zach if he is accepting people. I never really believed in having a business coach because I don't know. We look at some people that we were joking about recently where
Yeah.
like, you're not qualified to tell me I have a 8-figure business. You're like, oh, really? Cool. But Zach has really changed my life and changed my business. And so much so that we hired him for Luke. So definitely invest in people that can help you get better, even if it feels like it's, a lot of money or whatever. It is very important. And Zach, you have a Patreon group, just in case you're not accepting clients or if people can't afford to pay for one-to-one, correct? You still have
Yeah,
Patreon?
I put a pause on it. I put a pause
Okay.
on it just because I wanted to. At the time, actually, the gym was just going through some crazy transition stuff, so I wanted to focus on that. But I do take like a la carte calls. So
Okay.
like if I don't have reoccurring room, we can always do a one-off. I will always make sure that I feel like I can help before taking the call. So
Okay.
I'll ask for some questions, an overview of what's going on in your life with your business and like what you're working on, so you'd never waste your time. I always want to make sure that if we do hop on a call, that the time is going to be productive, and then I feel like we're going to have a really good, productive conversation.
And where can people find you?
Predominantly, so you can find me on Instagram at Bartell Barbell, and then if you want to email me, it's going to be Zack ZACK at SoCalPowerlifting.net. Is probably my best email. It's my gym email, but I use it predominantly for all business things. Other than that, I mean, I have a ZackBartell.com that it just exists, so no one else could steal it. But you
Can
could submit a form through there, and like I would get it.
can people drop in at the gym too?
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you want to come by the gym, I'm usually there in the afternoons, predominantly from 2 to 6-ish. So you could find me there. I'm usually either lifting weights, chowing down on some flame broiler or Waba grill and in a meeting. But
If people want to train at the gym,
oh yeah.
where is that located?
Oh, Irvine, California. We're in Southern California, really close to John Wayne Airport if you're a fly in, about an hour south of Los Angeles if you don't really know California geography.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. It's been an honor to speak with you today. You're a great friend, great mentor, and I'm just glad to have you on my life. So thanks for being here.
Really appreciate you, Maddie. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.